Vecranine was not a planet for peace. It was dry, full of dust, and always loud with the sounds of battles and crowds. Aliens from many species came here to watch fights, bet credits, and prove who was strongest. In the center of the capital city, there was a great arena made from dark stone. It was called the Circle of Pain, and today, a very special match was about to begin. The star of this event was a tall, dangerous alien named Master Scar. He belonged to the Draxian race, known across the galaxy for their brutal martial arts. Scar had never lost a fight, not once. He had beaten creatures twice his size and faster than sound. He didn't just fight for honor, he fought to humiliate his enemies. Now, he stood in the arena once again, his black claws clicking. "Against the stone, I challenge any warrior from any world," Scar shouted, his voice echoing, "Come, show me your strength, or run like cowards." The crowd roared, hundreds of aliens cheering, laughing, waiting for a brave fool to step forward. But this time, someone did. A figure walked into the arena, not large, not covered in scales, not glowing with power. It was a human. The crowd went quiet for a moment, surprised, then burst into laughter. "Is this a joke?" Someone shouted, "Where's his armor?" Other mocked, "Where are your claws, little human?" Scar sneered. The human man was tall but not bulky. His name was Sergeant Mason Hale. A soldier from Earth, he had no weapons, just a plain black combat suit and old boots covered in dirt. He didn't speak, didn't smile, just kept walking toward the center of the arena. Scar stepped closer, towering over him, his muscles flexing, his tail swaying slowly behind him. "I thought humans were smarter than this," Scar said, "but here you are, ready to be crushed." Still, Mason said nothing. He removed his jacket slowly and folded it, placing it on the edge of the arena wall. Then he began stretching calm, slow movements, arms rolling, legs bending, deep breaths. To the aliens watching, it looked almost like a dance. Scar turned to the crowd and raised his arms. "Look at this soft-skinned creature," he shouted. "He thinks he can fight me with human tricks." The crowd laughed louder, placing more bets, cheering for blood. But some stared more closely, eyes narrowing. There was something strange about how the human moved, so controlled, so focused. A loud gong echoed through the arena, signaling the start of the match. Scar rushed forward, fast like lightning, aiming a clawed strike at Mason's head, but the human dropped low, dodging the attack with ease. Before Scar could pull back, Mason spun and kicked his leg. Hitting a pressure point behind the knee, the alien stumbled. A silence fell over the crowd. Scar growled, surprised that hit had real power, clean and precise. He tried again. This time with full force, claws swinging in wide arcs. Mason blocked with his forearms, rolled sideways, and landed a quick punch to Scar's side. The alien winced, his ribs shaking from the impact. Who was this human? Scar backed away and narrowed his eyes. "You're no ordinary fighter," he said with a deep snarl. Mason didn't answer. He only adjusted his stance, 1 foot forward. Knees bent, hands up, eyes locked in. Now the crowd was no longer laughing. Some aliens leaned forward, their eyes wide. They had seen fights before, but never moves like this. No wasted motion, no flashy tricks, just clean, powerful, trained combat. This wasn't just a human. This was a soldier. Scar let out a loud roar and charged again. This time using a spinning attack known in his race as the tail whip of 9 deaths. It had broken the backs of even armored beasts. But Mason stepped into the spin instead of away, lowering his body and grabbing the tail mid-swing. With a sharp twist and a grunt, he threw Scar off balance, sending him rolling across the stone floor. The crowd gasped. Scar slammed his claws into the floor, catching himself before hitting the wall. His eyes were glowing red now, filled with rage. "You dare humiliate me?" he growled, Mason said just one thing. "I didn't come here to play." And with that, the human took a step forward, ready to end the first round on his terms. The crowd had gone completely silent. Even those who hated humans couldn't look away. This wasn't just a fight. It was the start of something no one had expected. And Mason was just getting started. Scar's chest rose and fell quickly. His pride stung harder than his bruised ribs. He had fought champions, monsters, and machines. But this human had dodged his strongest opening, and worse, he did it without effort. Scar wiped the dust from his face, eyes locked on the human, who stood still like a statue. Mason didn't move, not even a twitch. He watched, quiet. His breathing steady, his hands lowered now, but ready. His eyes didn't show fear or even anger. Just focus, pure and sharp. That's what shook Scar the most, not the punch, not the throw, but the silence. The calm confidence that wrapped around the human like invisible armor. The crowd, once loud and mocking, now whispered. The bets began shifting fast. Aliens leaned over rails and spoke in different tongues, asking the same thing. Who is this human? Scar struck again, faster this time, his claws aiming for Mason's stomach. He wanted to slice, to tear, to end this quickly. But again, the human moved just a few inches, just enough. The claws missed his skin by a breath, and in the same motion, Mason countered with his elbow. It struck Scar's shoulder and sent a shock down his spine. He stumbled again, eyes wide. He realized the human wasn't just reacting, he was learning. With each move, Mason saw more timing, reach, weight shift, balance points. This human was studying him. Mid-battle, Scar's rage boiled. He let out a scream and began using his tribe's sacred technique, a whirlwind of strikes that came from all sides. Spins, jumps, slashes, kicks, faster than most eyes could follow. Dust and sparks flew from the arena floor as he attacked again and again, but Mason didn't back away. He stepped through the strikes, flowing like water. Ducking, blocking, striking. Not once did he waste energy. His body moved as if it had been built for this exact moment. And when the last claw came, Mason dropped low and swept Scar's legs. The alien crashed to the ground, sending up a small cloud of dust. Gasps filled the air, 100 voices holding their breath at once. Scar lay there for a moment, blinking. His body was bruised, but still strong, yet something inside him cracked. This wasn't possible. This was a human. Humans were weak, slow, soft, always hiding behind weapons or machines. But this one fought like he had nothing else to live for. Mason stepped back, giving space. He didn't strike while Scar was down. Instead, he waited, arms relaxed but ready again. His silence spoke louder than any insult. Scar stood up slowly, his breathing heavier. He circled the human now. More careful, less sure of himself, Mason turned with him, steps matching. Eyes never breaking contact. A strange sound began rising from the crowd, not laughter, not cheering. It was curiosity. They had seen fights before, hundreds, maybe thousands. But never like this. Not a human outmaneuvering a Draxian master with no weapons, no tech, no tricks, just hands, just timing. Just skill. Scar lunged again, this time faking low and then slashing high. A clever move. One that usually confused even top fighters. But Mason didn't fall for it. His left hand blocked the fake, and his right landed a sharp palm strike on Scar's chest. The alien flew back again. Crashing into the arena wall, silence fell once more. Scar groaned and slid to one knee. He looked at his claws, then at Mason. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a lesson, and the human was the teacher. Mason said nothing, simply raised his hands again and waited. The aliens in the crowd stopped laughing. They stopped mocking. Now they leaned forward in their seats. eyes wide. The human hadn't. Just surprised Scar, he had shaken the belief of an entire galaxy that thought humans were beneath them. And the fight wasn't even over yet. Mason stood quietly in the center of the arena. The wind brushed the dust across his boots, and the only sound left was the heavy breathing of the alien in front of him. Scar wasn't used to this. He had never been knocked down in public. Never been studied like prey by someone smaller, slower, someone human. But this man, this earthborn soldier, moved like gravity, didn't bind him. The master rose again. Slower than before, his joints aching, his pride burning. But something had changed in his eyes. This wasn't just a match anymore, was survival. He had underestimated a species thought to be weak. Now, faced something far worse than brute strength. He faced precision, patience, and the terrifying skill of a man who had seen real war far above the ring in a private viewing box. An old alien general leaned forward. His translator buzzed softly as he whispered, "That human. He's been trained to kill with his hands." Others nodded, silence thickening across the chamber. What began as entertainment had turned into history. Deep inside Mason's mind, memories stirred. He wasn't here just to fight. He had been sent, assigned quietly by Earth's defense agency to test the threats rising in outer systems. He was not just a soldier, he was part of Ghost Division 7. A secret unit trained for close-quarter war with alien species. They learned how to fight blind, in zero gravity, with broken bones, underwater. In fire, in vacuum, they weren't the biggest, but they were the last thing enemies ever saw. Scar rushed again, now using a new tactic. Something desperate and wild, his claws curved, his tail whipping like a blade behind him. His feet moving in patterns passed down for generations. To the crowd, it looked like an unstoppable storm. To Mason, it was a pattern. And patterns could be broken. He closed the distance. Instead of retreating, he ducked under the tail, blocked. A left claw absorbed the hit on his arm. Then locked his hands around Scar's shoulder. A quick shift of weight, a twist of muscle. And Scar was slammed into the ground again flat. Hard wind knocked from his lungs, gasps echoed across the arena. And someone dropped their betting pad in shock. Mason stepped back again. No gloating, no smile. His right arm hung slightly limp now, likely bruised or fractured, but his face showed no pain. He'd felt worse before, in real battlefields where silence meant life and screams meant death. This arena was bright and loud, but to him, it was still war, and he would win it the same way. One breath at a time, Scar rolled onto his side. Coughing dust, he blinked at the human's still form. And for the first time in his life, he felt something unfamiliar. Not pain, not rage, but doubt. This man had come from a world without claws or fangs. But he had walked into the circle like it belonged to him, and now even the walls of tradition around Scar began to shake. Mason watched, waiting. His breathing had changed. Slower now, deeper. It was a technique Earth soldiers used to slow adrenaline to keep control when most would panic. A few aliens in the crowd began to rise from their seats, not to cheer, but in respect. They were watching something rare, not just strength, but discipline. It was as if the human had turned the fight into a quiet storm. A dance of purpose, and every time Scar moved, Mason already knew where the next strike would come. A small child in the crowd whispered to his mother, "Is he a master too?" Her eyes stayed on Mason as she whispered back, "No, child. He's something else." Scar growled low, forcing himself up. His pride still wanted to roar, still wanted to tear. But another part of him, the warrior part, had begun to listen. And it whispered that this fight could not be won the old way, because this human didn't come to prove himself. He came to teach a lesson, and the galaxy was finally listening. The air inside the arena had changed. It was no longer filled with shouting or laughter. Now it was thick with silence. The kind that made every small movement feel louder than. Thunder Scar stood on shaking legs, sweat dripping between his armored scales. Across from him, Mason looked almost still, like a shadow waiting for the sun to move in all his years. Scar had never felt this kind of pressure, not from kings, not from warlords, not from any creature he had fought. This human, with no claws, no armor, and no rage in his heart, was breaking him without saying a word. It wasn't just the body blows or the throws. It was the control, the patience, the terrifying focus behind every move. Mason didn't blink, didn't twitch. He waited with his hands open, ready, like he could see the next 5 seconds before they happened. It was a skill honed through years of combat, not for show, not for ego, but for survival. Scar's pride screamed for action. He needed to end this, needed to prove to every eye watching that he was still the master of this circle. He took a deep breath and began the form of the Void Serpent, his most dangerous style. Few had ever seen it. Fewer had lived through it. It was fast, unpredictable, made for war, not sport. He launched forward, spinning, clawing, tail slicing. The air, fangs bared for a throat strike. Dust exploded beneath his feet as he moved faster than before. But Mason didn't flinch. He stepped to the side, caught the tail mid-spin again, and brought his elbow crashing into the side of Scar's neck. The crowd winced as the alien stumbled and nearly fell. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a lesson being carved into muscle and memory. Scar swung again, this time wild, trying to land just one hit, just one. But Mason absorbed it with his left arm, spun under the next, and swept his leg out from under him. The alien hit the ground hard, dust rising around his broken rhythm. Mason stepped back, not chasing, not attacking. He waited again, calm, like a teacher watching a student fail the same question twice. His eyes didn't show hate, just truth. He was trained to read movements like books, and Scar's pages were wide open, high above, in the command balcony. Several alien warriors from different clans whispered among themselves. One said, "If humans can fight like this, we made a mistake." Another added, "That one fights like he's reading time itself." Down in the arena, Scar pushed himself up once more. He looked at the human, and for the first time in his life, he spoke. Without rage, "What are you?" he asked, his voice dry and low. Mason finally answered, just 3 words. "I was trained," he said. It was such a simple sentence, but it felt like a mountain falling on every arrogant voice that had once mocked him. This wasn't luck. This wasn't magic. It was discipline, pain, hours of failure turned into muscle memory. It was Earth's oldest truth. Humans don't break, they adapt. Scar looked around the crowd. Thousands of aliens watching in silence. He remembered his old masters, his training caves, the scars on his arms from drills, but all of that felt like noise now, because standing before him was someone who had been trained not just to win, but to endure, to evolve, to outlast. Mason didn't smile. He didn't need to. His silence had already spoken louder than any victory scream, and Scar knew with bone-deep clarity. If he didn't change something now, he would not leave this arena standing. Scar wiped blood from his lips, tasting the bitter mix of dust and defeat. His claws twitched, not from pain, but from something worse out. He had never hesitated in a fight before, but now his thoughts moved slower than his body. And across from him, the human still stood like stone, not tired, not afraid, just waiting. As if he'd already seen the end and didn't need to rush to it. For a moment, Scar wasn't in the arena. He was back in the mountains of his homeworld, kneeling in the snow as his old teacher whispered, "Real strength is not how hard you strike, but how long you can hold your breath before you strike at the time." Scar had ignored those words, choosing speed, brutality, power, but now, inside this silent circle, facing a man who held his breath like a storm held lightning. He understood. The arena lights flickered slightly. Clouds of dust still floated around their feet. Untouched, waiting for the next crash, Mason flexed his bruised shoulder once, then lowered his hand and tilted his head. No one watching could believe what they saw. The human was letting the alien attack first. Again, Scar's pride flared one last time. He roared and unleashed the forbidden form-blood spiral flow. A move so dangerous it had been banned in ritual combat on 5 planets. He spun into a blur, claws slashing through air, tail striking low and fast, fangs dripping venom from his own glands. He became a cyclone of death, and everything he knew all. His pain, his victories, his rage exploded through it, and Mason moved, not wildly, not with panic. He shifted through the spiral like he had rehearsed it 100 times. Like the entire technique was written into his bones. He caught the tail with one foot, ducked the claws, blocked the bite with his arm, and finally stepped inside the attack. Scar had never seen anyone move that close to the core of his spiral and survive. But Mason didn't just survive. He ended it with one clean motion. He locked his arms around Scar's leg, twisted, and drove his shoulder down like a hammer. A loud snap echoed across the arena, alien bone breaking, the kind that couldn't be ignored. Scar crashed onto his back, the pain shooting up his body like a scream with no voice. He tried to rise, but his leg didn't answer. The crowd didn't cheer. They stood frozen, silent, as if afraid they'd missed something sacred. And maybe they had, because what Mason did wasn't just win a fight. He dismantled a legend, move by move, without hate, without cruelty. He stepped away, giving Scar room to breathe, but the alien didn't rise. He lay there staring at the sky, chest heaving, eyes wide. And for the first time in his life, Scar didn't feel like a master. He felt like a student. Mason didn't bow, didn't raise his arms in victory. He only watched, letting the silence speak for him. And in that silence, every alien in the arena felt the same cold truth. They had judged humans wrong. They thought Earth was soft, its people too emotional, too weak. But now they saw the truth. Humans didn't win because of size or strength. They won because they didn't stop. Even when broken, even when bleeding, they adapted. They waited, learned, and then struck where it mattered most. And nothing, no armor, no reputation, no ancient technique stopped that. Scar did not speak as the dust began to settle. His body ached, his leg refused to move, but it wasn't the pain that held him down. It was the weight of truth pressing against his chest like a mountain. Across from him, the human stood quiet and still, like a shadow that had always been. There, watching, waiting, surviving. Mason took a slow breath and stepped forward, his boots leaving light prints in the dirt. The arena lights above cast long shadows, stretching both fighters toward the walls. He stopped just a few feet from Scar and looked down. There was no anger in his face, no pride, no celebration. Only calm, only respect to everyone watching. The moment felt like something ancient, something more than a fight. Scar blinked through the sting in his eyes, and his voice came out softer than it ever had before. "Why didn't you finish me?" Mason looked around at the thousands of eyes staring at him. He had no microphone, no speech prepared. He simply said, "Because you've already learned what you needed." The silence broke like a quiet wave through the crowd. No one moved, no one shouted. Even the gamblers, the warlords, the soldiers. They watched with their mouths half open, because in that moment, the human wasn't just a fighter. He had become something else, something more dangerous and more noble. Scar tried to sit up, his hand clutching his broken leg. Mason knelt. beside him and reached out not to strike, but to help. The alien flinched at first. But then, slowly, he accepted the hand. Mason pulled him to a seated position. Their eyes meeting again, not as enemies, but as equals. Far above the ring, a horn sounded, the signal that the fight was over. But even without it, everyone, already, knew who had won, not just the match, but the respect of every warrior who had ever thought humans were beneath them. Scar bowed his head, slow and low. The Draxian bow was sacred, only given to those who had earned absolute respect. No one had ever received it in the arena before, and now it was given to a man from Earth. Mason didn't bow in return. He simply stepped back and let the gesture stand. There was no need for more words. Around the arena, silence began to break into murmurs, then applause, then full cheering, not wild cheering, but something deeper, honest roar of recognition. From this moment, Mason's name would travel across systems, not as a soldier, not even as a fighter, but as the man who taught a galaxy that humans were never meant to be ignored in one corner. A young alien girl held up a sketchpad, quickly drawing Mason's stance. In another section, a group of alien martial artists had already started copying his footwork. And in the back, a general made a quiet call to his command ship. "Find out how the humans train their warriors," he said, "and do it quickly." Mason walked off the field without a limp, though his arms still hung stiff at his side. He didn't need a parade or a trophy. He had done what he came to prove, that discipline and heart mattered more than fear and noise. And behind him, the alien who once called him weak now watched with quiet respect, knowing the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. Mason walked through the metal doors behind the arena. Leaving the roar of the crowd behind him, the lights above flickered, casting long shadows along the corridor walls. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The silence inside him was louder than any cheer. It was the silence of a man who had done what needed to be done, and nothing more. A medic bot rolled up beside him, its scanner blinking red as it checked his arm. He waved it off, quietly. The pain was real, but it didn't matter. There had been worse pain in darker places, with no cameras, no applause. Only blood and silence and survival. This was easy by comparison. As he reached the exit ramp of the arena, a transmission pinged on his wrist device. A small message flashed across the screen. "Mission complete, return optional." He stared at it for a second, then shut the message off. Optional was all he ever wanted. Meanwhile, inside the arena, things were changing fast. Scar remained seated in the center, his leg wrapped, his pride cracked, but not broken. Around him, young fighters and elders alike approached with questions about humans, about Earth, about the techniques they had never seen before for the first time in his life. Scar didn't pretend to know all the answers. He simply said, "Watch the recordings, study his form, and understand this: he didn't come to fight. He came to teach across the galaxy." News of the battle spread like wildfire. Clips of the human's quiet stance, the way he moved, the look in his eyes before each strike went viral on 1,000 alien networks. Some called him the Silent Blade. Others called him the Stone Warrior. But the name that stuck was simple: the Human. And that name became a symbol. On warships and colonies, alien officers began adding human combat manuals to their training schedules. Military schools debated whether Earth should now be recognized as a combat world, even those who hated humans felt the shift because one man had changed what they thought was possible. Back on Earth, Mason didn't return to parades or medals. He returned to a quiet station at the edge of space, a place where his team waited, where missions were taken, completed, and forgotten. But this one wouldn't be forgotten. Not by the Draxians, not by the spectators, and not by the galaxy. And in time, stories turned to legends. Some said he could see your move before you made it. Others claimed his punches could break steel. But the truth was simpler. He wasn't the strongest, he was the most prepared. And when the next challenge rises, somewhere in the stars, when someone laughs at the name human, there will be silence in the room, followed by one voice saying, "Be careful, there." Not as weak as they look, and in the shadows of some distant world. A quiet man might stretch his shoulders, roll his neck, and step into another circle. Not for glory, not for fame, but because someone needs to learn what it means to stand against Earth, and he'll teach them, one move at a time.